Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining us for our virtual tree tracking event. My name is Lauren and I'm an intern at the Center for Sustainability, and today I'll be walking you through the process of tree tracking from home. So for the first part of this process, I'll be walking for about 20 minutes trying to count as many trees as I can around me, and I'll also be taking pictures of certain trees to look up their species later. Additionally, looking for native species. I know that trees such as pines, cottonwoods, and desert willows are native to where I live, so I'll be keeping a special eye out for those. I've got my mask with me, so I'll be sure to put that on in case I pass by anyone while I'm walking. So don't forget to grab yours before you head out. And with that, let's get started. Okay, so I just finished the part of the process where I'm doing my tree counting. I counted about 160 trees around me in total, and for this next part I will be choosing my tree to adopt to mimic our on-campus adoption process. So I'm choosing this tree behind me, and the first step will be to take a good picture of the entire tree. Okay, so the next step of our tree adoption process will be looking at the overall balance of the tree. As you can see, the trunk is pretty slanted, and I can also see that overall the branches look pretty balanced, but on the far side of the tree, you can see that some of them are hanging a little bit low, so that's something that I would also note in the section asking about the balance. So for the next step, I'll be looking for any animals or insects that are interacting with the tree. So you just wanted to make sure that you look all the way around the tree. And I can see a spider web, so we can assume that there's some spiders up there, maybe some other smaller insects. And that seems to be all that I can find in the tree. So that's all for that step. I'm going to move on to looking at the health of the tree overall. And to do that, we'll be going through the list of potential health conditions that are listed in the Google form. So looking at the leaves of the tree, we can see that overall they look pretty healthy. Most of them appear to be pretty green overall. We can see that some of them are a little bit curled inwards, so I'm going to make a note of that on my Google form. And you can also see, like on this leaf, this one has a little bit of discoloration, but that's pretty small relative to the entire tree. But I will still make a note that some of them have some brown spots on the edges. Otherwise, the leaves look pretty healthy. There's no big holes on them or anything like that. So overall, we can say that the leaves look pretty good. And for the last step of this process, we'll be looking closer at the trunk of the tree. I'm looking for any gaps or cavities or splits in the trunk. You can see there's one little cavity up there. And as we keep looking around, we've got a cavity down here at the base of the trunk. I'm also checking to see if there's any sap coming out anywhere of the tree, and I don't see that so far, so that's a good sign. We've got a little cut in the outer layer of the bark here. There's a scuff mark there. Another one right here. I'm also not seeing any moss or fungi growing on this trunk, so that's definitely a good sign. You've got a few scuffs on the outer layer. And this last little scuff, again in the outer part of the bark. So I'm going to make a note of those. There's no sap, so that's a good sign, no moss or fungi. And with that, we are done looking at the trunk of the tree. We are all done with this portion of the virtual tree tracking event. The last thing I'll be doing is showing you the tree species that I found, as well as showing you how I'm going to fill out my Google form. Hi everyone, so I just wanted to give you a quick example of how you can use an app to identify a tree species. So I'm using the app iNaturalist. It does require a login, but it's completely free, so I definitely recommend using it or checking it out at least. So I'm going to be identifying the tree that I adopted from today. So I'm going to be selecting that photo and adding it into the app. So click next, and then you can choose to upload your location if you'd like, so that you can get more accurate results, or if you prefer not to, you don't have to. And then you'll click the suggestions tab and you can look through the list here. So I see this elm tree at the top of the list, and if I want to look more into that, I can click the little eye icon. And looking through these photos, you can see if they look like the tree that you found, and I can tell that these don't quite look like what I found, so this probably isn't my tree. So I'm going to go back, and I know that it looks like the narrow-leaf cottonwood, so just to confirm, I'll go to the info, and looking at these pictures of the leaves, they definitely look like what I saw today, so I think that's a pretty safe bet. So with that, I'm going to select this tree, the narrow-leaf cottonwood, and that is all. Finally, I'll be filling out my Google form really quickly. So first you'll enter the date of your walk and the location where you took your walk. And then next will be the number of trees that you counted. So as I mentioned earlier, I found about 160 trees. So I'm going to type that in there. The insects and animals that I saw resting on, living on, or eating on the trees. I know that I passed by some birds while I was walking, so I'm just going to say birds. If you can get more specific, please feel free to. The trees that I identified, so I know that I found a weeping willow, a black pine, and a Chinese elm. So just type in whatever you find. Next, I know that I did in fact find some native species, so I'm going to say yes. The species name of my adopted tree was a narrow-leaf cottonwood. So I'll type that in there. Next, looking at the shape of the tree, as we discussed earlier, I know that the trunk is definitely leaning and there are in fact some branches hanging a little too low, so I'm going to make notes of those. Animals or insects on the tree, we saw spiderweb in there, so I can definitely infer that there's some spiders. So I'm just going to put that, again, get as specific as you can. Next, looking at the health conditions, we saw a little bit of discoloration. We saw some curling on the leaves, definitely some cavities, and we saw some cuts and some scuff marks, so I'm just going to put those there. And other than that, the tree was healthy. So these are all the conditions that I'm going to mark. If you're feeling unsure about whether you saw a condition, I would recommend that you list it just in case. On campus, when we alert our landscaping team to these conditions, it lets them know to go check the tree out and make sure that it's doing okay. So in the practice of doing that, I would definitely recommend marking whatever you think you see, even if you're not sure. And the last step will be submitting a picture of your tree. So you'll just select the file from your device, and after that you can submit and you are all done. Thanks so much for joining us today, and happy tree tracking, everyone!